Good morning, everyone. How are you? You're good? It's like being, at home, for vacation with my family, like Thanksgiving or Christmas or something with my family. I'm surrounded by so many folks that I've been working with for so many years, and I'm so humbled to be here. And you kind of ask yourself, why? Well, think about it. 25 years of Linux. Holy cow. I mean, I just got a couple gray hairs, one or two, right? Just a couple. But I mean, when you think back to those days when all this started, I mean, do you remember the euphoria, to use that word, that you experienced when you had Slackware and you threw Linux on your box and they had the adapter, for your SCSI adapter, kind of adaptic thing ready to go and you can boot up. And that was an amazing experience, right? And think about the euphoria you experienced when you first opened a web browser. That was amazing. Like, oh my gosh, I can click here, I can go forward, I can go backwards, right? And because of those phenomenons, and because of the culture that we created back then, we were able to, as Jim Zemlin says, stand on the shoulders of these giants and enjoy this phenomenon that we're in now, right? And so coming to this event and just seeing the people, seeing the vibrancy is very, very humbling, because I know that what to come next is going to be even better than what we have now. And you all, are creating that. So let's keep that in context as we talk about some of the technology that we go through today. We're not living in an island anymore. So there's going to be three kind of underlying themes to what I'd like to talk about. First of all, the first one is speed. Speed is a currency. It's a currency that developers value. It's a currency that business people certainly value. Speed and change, and the ability to go fast and change. The second is choice with consistency. Okay? The ability to build applications with speed and change, but have choice as to how you deploy, where you deploy, how you enter the application building part, whether it's at a high level, event-driven architecture application, a simple container that you provide that others use, an API, a reusable object store somewhere, right? Choice with consistency. You want to be able to have a marketplace across the third concept, which is an open cloud architecture. So those are the three kind of points I'd like to cover, but I'm going to center that discussion around an atomic element. I like to think about things as compositions, things built on other things. In fact, that's how we at IBM are building our cloud. It's built on these open technologies, but I like to start with an atomic element, and that is the container, right? And when you look at the container, we are all very familiar with, I think, the most obvious use cases and where people are trying to use containers, where you want to have this consistency between applications from test to production, whether you want to have the ability to scale up capacity, run your code on multi-cloud environments, because guess what? We are going to live in a multi-cloud environment. There was at one point when the web was being worked by Tim Berners-Lee and we're writing all these standards, there were companies that thought they would be one web, one centralized kind of set of stuff, right? That's a little crazy back then, right? We also used to fight over the blink tag. Remember the blink tag? That was really important. We had to fight over that. It was funny sitting in these working groups and listening to the vendors, kind of fight over whether or not the blink tag should be proprietary. But you should keep that in context as we think about code, right? What really matters, what really should be interoperable. So those are some of the basic use cases for containers. But as you try to build speed and the ability to change, and as you want to have this choice with consistency, you need to kind of move a little bit beyond this basic capability. And so I'm going to spend a moment talking about some of the elements that certainly our clients, certainly I think all of us are developing, and that are really important for empowering the atomic element that is container technology. The ability to acquire, build, deliver, run, and maintain the life cycle of these elements, right? Because if we don't focus on these different these different steps in the life cycle, and if we don't build choice with consistency, and if we don't think about this up front, we're going to be in a no different place on where we were with VMs, right? VM sprawl. What version of what is running where, right? What happens if I shut this thing down, right? For example. So acquiring, say, containers, whether it's from a public source, a commercial source, a private source, certification of containers, right? All of that is really important when you think about container technology. Building them. How do you automate? There's this discussion of essentially building all the automation you need for an application into a single unit. So you can have that 12-factor application, right? How you do that and how we standardize around the automation process is extremely important for building. Delivering. One of the folks that, one of the biggest problems that we're certainly trying to work on is the notion of managing vulnerabilities in containers. As you start having things nested within stuff, how do you know that you're building an application that is indeed trustworthy, that doesn't have vulnerabilities, right? That's an example of something you need to consider when you deliver containers in this chain. And of course, running them. How do you run them? Do you want to run them on bare metal? We've got a great example of containers. I think, Andrew, are you in the audience here, Andrew? Where are you? Is he awake? Andrew. Raise your hand, Andrew. We got a couple IBM folks here. Like Andrew, Elizabeth, Doug, Phil, Alex, Jeff, If you guys want to talk to them, please do reach out to them. But, Andrew worked with Electronic Arts. And we, run quite a bit of their back ends for mobile games on the IBM cloud, right? And they need performance, network performance, performance of standing up containers, slowing them, turning them off. The actual runtimes within the containers need to perform, right? And it's amazing to see the value they get from running containers on bare metal, right? So there's different options into how you run your environments. And of course, the all-important maintaining. And how do you monitor, manage, dashboard, regulate, scale containers? These are all important parts of kind of technology that you need in the life cycle of a container, technology that is not fully understood, I think, certainly in the open source community. We're building on that, and certainly needed by our clients, and stuff that a lot of us who provide container-based or cloud-native-based capability deliver to our clients. But you see, here's the kicker. If you want to actually have this speed, this choice with consistency, you need to build it on an open foundation. I'm talking about an atomic element here, right? The stuff that we're doing here in Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And by the way, I think it's been, 9 months since we launched this? I remember standing on stage with Jim, right, and the folks from Google at, I think it was OSCON, where we announced this, right, to the world. And we've come so far so quickly, and there's so much more to do. But we need to look at the elements under this and the elements on top. Because if we do not build an open architecture from the top and the bottom, all these different pieces that we heard about before, and I'll talk about specifically some of them, you're going to get stuck. You're not going to have that choice with consistency. You're not going to be able to build that life cycle in a way that allows multi-cloud deployments, or in a way that is truly open across topologies, whether it's public, private, dedicated, okay? Now, as you start to do that, patterns start to emerge, and you go to the next step of speed, right, and change. And that is this notion of event-driven architectures and microservice-oriented applications. And man, we have been talking about the concepts of microservices in computer science for a very long time, right? I'm a computer scientist, right, for many decades. I get excited every couple of years because something happens. I was excited back when we were doing the DOM for HTML. Because think about it, the DOM was an API-driven, event-driven type of infrastructure for say, human-centered type applications. People started pushing that into the back end, though, right? I was excited with service-oriented architecture, and I still am, because the concept of creating these reusable services were really, really cool. But each one of these kind of technologies had major impacts in the industry, but never kind of really reached that nirvana, right? That nirvana of what some folks call citizen development, where your mom, let's say, let's assume that your mom is like mine in Puerto Rico, who's not very technical, right, can build an application. My mom sends me emails in all caps. I don't know why, but she does, okay? And so she's yelling at me constantly. But she's not yelling at me, but for some reason the all caps is on. But imagine empowering someone like my mother to build an application. That is the citizen developer. That's what we're trying to get to, right? The ability to kind of create business processes, because an application is a business process, that suits you. So we're at another moment in time where we're going to try to do this. However, I am much more optimistic now than I ever was, because we've got operations in mind now, right? We have this history of openness that gets us to a point where we can actually start to do these things. So where we're going to head, I believe, with the Cloud Native Computing Foundation and the open source that we're building is exactly that. So let's cover some of the components. You already heard about the Open Container Initiative. I remember very fondly pacing around my room in my house on a Sunday right before we launched this, right? Making sure that we had the wording in the press release right and all the right folks. But this is an important element because you need to have, right, interoperability at the base runtime specification, image specification. And I think we're doing good here. There's some bumps in the road and so forth, but we're doing, Phil, are we doing good here? Are we good? Okay, good. Thank you, Phil. Phil spends a lot of time working in that community for us. Now, compute, storage, and network. Come on, folks. We do not want to reinvent over and over and over again base capability around compute, storage, and network. Right? Why not build your container or your cloud-native capability on existing APIs and existing code? And that's exactly what we're doing in IBM, and a lot of folks are doing this as well in the industry, right? But it's important to reiterate this. It's amazing to see what has happened with OpenStack. And I would argue that OpenStack was probably the first of what I would call the modern day open source 2.0 open governance models. It kind of started this realization again that open source and that open governance and meritocracy and the way you behave and the way you have influence in the community really, really matters. I mean, I'm so humbled when I go to and again, this is like, you can think of it as a data center technology, right? You go to one of these conferences, you've got 9,000 people showed up for Austin for the OpenStack conference, right? I think the next one is Barcelona. I was talking to Jonathan, who runs the foundation, and they're expecting between 8 to 10. They don't know, right? So that's an amazing phenomenon, and it's an amazing code base, and it's been used by so many clients. I mean, Walmart runs hundreds of thousands of cores. We run thousands and thousands of cores, right? So if you can build your capability on this open infrastructure, that means you're getting choice with consistency at the ground level. And of course, we heard about Cloud Foundry and the advent of the platform. Because again, it's another entry point, right? When you think about how you build with speed and reusability, you have these different entry points. You have base level compute, storage, and network and patterns and deployments within, say, OpenStack. You have the atomic element that is containers, where it kind of sits in the middle of all this. But then you just want to be able to build an application quickly and not think about anything, right? And you want to do it on a platform that is truly open, that no single vendor controls, where you have multiple options to go deploy, multiple places. The Cloud Foundry Foundation, and hats off to the folks at Pivotal who helped bring this forward, right, is doing an amazing job in helping not just vendors, but growing an ecosystem. The Cloud Foundry user base, conferences, et cetera, are just huge with excitement and lots of applications. I mean, I'm real proud. We run, I think, the largest Cloud Foundry deployment in the world. We've got 48 data centers across the world in our IBM cloud. And our Bluemix platform gives you capability for OpenStack containers and also Cloud Foundry. And we have literally, I think it's 20,000 new developers a week signing up to Bluemix using these different capabilities, right? And why is that? Why is that? It's because of speed and the ability to change. Remember that? Speed and the ability to change, right? Build your code, push it out, go into production. Build your code, push it out, go into production. Same environment, your test and your production environment, right? And what we're doing here in the Cloud Native Computing Foundation with Kubernetes and Prometheus, we spoke about that earlier, and where we're going to head. So we spoke about this idea of kind of a call for more participation for building out this vision of where we're headed with microservices and exposing, say more transactional apps as APIs that can be used, say, in Cloud Foundry applications or others. I really encourage you all to get involved and participate because we're at the cusp here of something quite special. So when you think about this basis, the centers of gravity that builds out the architecture, right? Your compute, storage, and network, your containers, your paths, all of this built together. APIs, standardize how you expose function for reusability, right? The OpenAPI initiative, which is essentially an initiative to standardize Swagger, right, as one way of exposing interfaces. You start to have all of the elements you need to do microservices, to do the next step, right? To satisfy my mother, the citizen developer, right? So in comes OpenWhisk. I'm so proud to be with IBM. I've been, it's funny, when you go to conferences or, I spend half my time in Silicon Valley, half my time in New York. You meet somebody and say, hey, who are you? Oh, I'm Angel, and so I'm so-and-so, and I've been with this company, that company, this company, that company. They have this long list of companies that they've been with. And I'm like, what about you? I'm like, let's see. 1997, I joined IBM out of college after I got my PhD in computer science. Joined IBM Watson Research Center. Well, at IBM, you can have so many different careers, because if you look at all the stuff that I've done, it's like 50 companies, right? And so there's a lot of innovation that goes on, okay, at a company like IBM, not just these big centers of gravity. So from an open source perspective, there's a place that I encourage you to look at called DeveloperWorks Open. I don't know if Jeff is here. Jeff can tell you more about that. But that's where we put our kind of emerging open technology. Some of it will have great ecosystems around it, like, say, Node-RED or OpenWhisk. Some of it might not, and we're just going to have to kill it. But you'll have clarity. You have clarity as to which open source is taking off. And OpenWhisk is one of them. And OpenWhisk is an open event-driven architecture, okay, that allows you to very easily build these kind of serverless applications, expose them as APIs, build rule sets, reusable rule sets, have application chaining, work in multi-cloud environments. We've run this on OpenStack, on multiple clouds. We're going to do a big interoperability thing at the OpenStack Summit. We'll be showing some of this stuff live on stage there. And it's just amazing to see the freedom you get as a developer. But this is the type of technology, standardization around the base event-driven infrastructure, how you expose APIs, how you define rules that will allow this ability to cater to the citizen developer, to my mother, right? And so I suggest that if you can, check out OpenWhisk if you haven't, right, and get involved because it's hopefully going to help out there. So what about us? Well, go to Bluemix.net. That's where you can access all of our technology. From a container perspective, remember that life cycle I spoke about, right? We give that to you. We build our capability on OpenStack using Docker, Kubernetes, right? We contribute, as you know, of course, in these communities. We're not open source leeches, right? We contribute in these communities. We give as much as we take, right? And we've been doing it for years. But what's amazing and what has been so much fun about this journey of building out our capability, right, is the sense of euphoria that people get when they're able to get the speed, get the change that they want, get the choice with consistency, whether they're building an application, 12-factor application on a public cloud, dedicated, which means we can carve out a part of the data center just for you, right, or in your local environment, right? Because the reality for cloud is hybrid. You know that, right? Some people get enamored with new, shiny applications sitting on a public cloud, which are important. It's good to do, right? But man, if you've got transactional data, transactional information sitting here in the mothership, right? Imagine the kinds of applications you can build there, right? And if you can build cloud-native applications on-premise, connecting to those systems of record, right? On systems like, say, Linux 1, right? You like my T-shirt? Peace, love, and Linux 1. Isn't that cute, right? You're unlocking the wealth of information. Imagine, as a developer, now I might scare some of you, but imagine if you could build an application in Node using a Mongo API into a vSAM file on a mainframe. And your developer doesn't have to know you're using a mainframe. It's freaking unbelievable, right? And you expose that, as an API into this microservices event-driven world, right? And you create new applications, right? All governed, all managed through this life cycle. That's kind of what we're doing at IBM. And that's what we're headed. It's this notion of hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. No application is an island. So I'll leave you where I started, right? It's about speed. It's about change. It's about choice with consistency. It's about building an open architecture, right? And if we do these things, you will always have that sense of euphoria. You will always have that feeling of when you first use Slackware, right, or Red Hat, or your favorite distribution to create your Linux box, or you first open a web browser. Because you are building on the shoulders of giants. You will be able to innovate where it matters to you, right? And for whatever company you're working for. So please, I encourage you to try all of our container and cloud-native capability on Bluemix.net. It is very easy to use. Go there now, check it out. And I most importantly encourage you, right, to join these communities, to be active participants, whether you're users providing feedback or whether you're a developer. With that, thank you very much for your time. I look forward to chatting with you all as the day progresses. Thank you.